66 million years ago, in a single catastrophic moment, the reign of the most magnificent creatures to ever walk the earth was brought to a sudden and shattering end. An asteroid, larger than Mount Everest and traveling at 60,000 miles an hour, slammed into the coast of modern-day Mexico. The explosion was billions of times more powerful than all the nuclear weapons on our planet combined. In the blink of an eye, the world changed forever. The sky turned into a furnace, forests ignited spontaneously, and a darkness that would last for years engulfed the globe. This is the story of the kings and queens of the lost world, the titans who ruled our planet for over 160 million years. Welcome to the age of the dinosaurs. Hello everyone, I am Alex, and I am thrilled to guide you through this epic journey back in time. We are going to explore the rise, the dominance, and the dramatic fall of these incredible animals. We will separate fact from fiction and look at the real science behind the fossils. If you enjoy learning about prehistoric life and the mysteries of our planet's past, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Also, take a moment to leave a comment below telling me which dinosaur is your absolute favorite. I love reading your thoughts and theories. Now, let us step into the time machine and travel back to the beginning. It began in the ashes of the greatest disaster the planet had ever seen. Before the first true dinosaur ever took a breath, the Earth was recovering from the Permian extinction, an event often called the Great Dying. It wiped out nearly 90% of all life on Earth. The world was a harsh, arid place dominated by a single supercontinent known as Pangaea. The land was dry, the interior was scorching hot, and vast deserts stretched for thousands of miles. But in this dry, hostile environment, evolution was experimenting with something new. Small, fast, and agile creatures began to emerge from the shadows. They were not the dominant animals of their time. That title belonged to the cynodonts and dicynodonts, strange mammal-like reptiles that lumbered across the plains. But these newcomers had a distinct advantage. They walked upright, with their legs tucked directly underneath their bodies, rather than sprawled out to the sides like a lizard. This simple change in anatomy allowed them to move faster and breathe more efficiently. Among the earliest of these pioneers was a creature known as Eoraptor, or dawn stealer. It was a small, lightly built predator, about the size of a modern wolf, but with a long tail and a mouth full of sharp, serrated teeth. It darted through the undergrowth of the ancient Triassic forests, hunting insects and small vertebrates. This little hunter represents the humble beginnings of the dynasty. At this time, the dinosaurs were merely bit players in a grand drama, waiting for their turn in the spotlight. The skies were filled with giant insects, and the oceans were teeming with strange, armored fish. The climate was volatile, shifting between wet monsoons and brutal droughts. Survival was the only law. As millions of years passed, these early dinosaurs began to diversify. They split into two main groups based on the shape of their hip bones: the lizard-hipped saurischians and the bird-hipped ornithischians. It is a strange twist of evolution that birds, which evolved from the lizard-hipped dinosaurs, ended up with a hip structure that resembles the ornithischians. But in the Triassic, these lineages were just getting started. We see the rise of the herrerasaurs, larger and more fearsome predators that ruled the hunting grounds before the famous giants appeared. They were fast runners with powerful jaws, capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves. The world was changing. The continents were starting to creak and groan, preparing to tear apart, setting the stage for the giants to come. The era of the shadows was ending, and the sun was rising on the age of giants. The slow, grinding movement of the tectonic plates finally tore the supercontinent of Pangaea apart. As the land masses separated, vast oceans opened up, and the climate began to shift. The intense heat of the interior was replaced by humid, warm conditions that spread across the globe. This was the dawn of the Jurassic period. It was a time of explosive growth, not just for the dinosaurs, but for the plant life that sustained them. Gymnosperms, including towering conifers and cycads with thick, trunk-like stems, created lush, dense forests. These forests provided the fuel needed to support massive bodies. In this new, verdant world, the herbivores grew to sizes that defy belief. They were the sauropods, the long-necked titans. Creatures like Diplodocus and Barosaurus evolved necks that could reach up to 50 feet in length. Imagine standing next to an animal whose neck alone is 5 times taller than a human being. Their sheer size was their primary defense. A full-grown sauropod was simply too big to be attacked by most predators. Their massive bodies acted as biological furnaces, digesting tons of vegetation every single day. They did not chew their food. Instead, they stripped branches of leaves and swallowed them whole, using stones in their stomachs called gastroliths to grind up the tough plant matter. They traveled in herds, their footsteps shaking the ground, creating a rhythmic thumping that echoed through the ancient valleys. But where there is abundance, there is always predation. The rise of the giants brought forth the rise of the giant killers. This was the time of Allosaurus, one of the most common and successful predators of the late Jurassic. Allosaurus was smaller than the famous Tyrannosaurus rex that would come later, but it was no less terrifying. It often reached 30 feet in length and weighed several tons. What made Allosaurus unique was its skull design. It was light but strong, with hinges that allowed it to open its mouth incredibly wide. This suggests that Allosaurus might have used a unique hunting strategy. Instead of just bone-crushing bites, it may have used its upper jaw like a hatchet, swinging its head down to slash and gouge its prey, causing massive blood loss and shock. Watching an Allosaurus hunt is watching a master surgeon of the prehistoric world at work. It would target the weak, the young, or the sick within a herd of sauropods, using its speed and agility to outmaneuver animals that were 100 times its size. It was a brutal, high-stakes game of survival played out on a scale that is hard for us to comprehend today. As the Jurassic period faded into the Cretaceous, the world continued to transform. The continents drifted closer to their current positions. Sea levels rose, flooding large portions of the continents and creating warm, shallow inland seas. This era gave rise to some of the most iconic and bizarre armored dinosaurs the world has ever seen. Evolution was engaged in an endless arms race. As predators became faster and smarter, herbivores had to become tougher. This led to the development of living tanks. One of the most famous of these armored giants was Stegosaurus. With its back adorned by 2 rows of large, bony plates and a tail tipped with 4 long, sharp spikes, Stegosaurus was a formidable opponent. For a long time, scientists debated the purpose of the plates. Were they for protection? Did they help the animal regulate its body temperature? The leading theory today suggests that these plates were covered in skin and blood vessels, acting as large radiators. By flushing blood into the plates, a Stegosaurus could cool down in the hot Cretaceous sun or pump blood through them to warm up in the morning. It also means these plates could have been brightly colored, used for display to attract mates or intimidate rivals. But it was the tail, known as the thagomizer, that was the true weapon. Imagine a predator, perhaps a hungry Allosaurus relative, trying to attack a stegosaurus from behind. One swing of that muscular tail could drive the spikes through bone and hide with devastating force, killing or severely injuring the attacker. It was a clear message: do not touch. In North America, the armored lineage reached its peak with Ankylosaurus. Looking like a giant, low-slung tank covered in thick, bony armor and spikes, Ankylosaurus was almost impregnable. Even its eyelids were armored. But its most famous feature was the massive club at the end of its tail. This club was made of several bones fused together, creating a wrecking ball that could shatter the legs of even the largest predators. When attacked, an Ankylosaurus would crouch down to protect its soft underbelly and swing its tail with tremendous force. The atmosphere of a Cretaceous forest must have been tense. The predators were not just hunting. They were risking their lives every time they approached a well-armored herbivore. It was a world of grit, spikes, and hardened skin, where survival meant being built like a fortress. While the giants thundered across the land, the skies and the seas were ruled by creatures that were not dinosaurs, but lived alongside them. They were the pterosaurs and the marine reptiles. These animals proved that the age of reptiles was a global phenomenon, conquering every environment on Earth. In the oceans, the seas teemed with life that looked like it came from a nightmare. Creatures like Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus patrolled the deep waters. Mosasaurus was a true marine monster, a relative of modern monitor lizards, but growing to lengths of over 50 feet. It had a double-hinged jaw that allowed it to swallow prey almost as big as itself, including other marine reptiles and large sharks. Its fins were powerful paddles that could propel it through the water at surprising speeds, making it an ambush predator of the highest order. Above the waves, the air was filled with the sound of leathery wings. Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight. They were not just flying lizards, they were diverse and highly specialized. In the later Cretaceous, the largest of them all took to the skies. Quetzalcoatlus northropi. This animal is the largest flying creature ever known to science. Its wingspan was nearly 40 feet, which is wider than a fighter jet. Standing on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe. Despite its terrifying appearance, recent studies suggest that Quetzalcoatlus might have been a stalker, walking gracefully on long, spindly legs through the fern prairies, hunting small animals, lizards, and perhaps even baby dinosaurs. It would pick them up with its long, pointed beak, swallowing them whole. The life cycle of these flying giants is equally fascinating. Fossil evidence suggests that some pterosaurs cared for their young, much like birds do today. We have found fossils of pterosaur eggs with embryos inside, showing that the babies had well-developed wing membranes, meaning they could likely fly, or at least glide, shortly after hatching. This maternal instinct adds a layer of complexity to these ancient beasts. They were not just cold-blooded killing machines, they were parents, protectors, and travelers. They crossed vast oceans and navigated by the stars, dominating the aerial realm for millions of years before the Great Extinction wiped them out alongside their terrestrial cousins. The world was reaching the peak of the dinosaur era. The continents were isolated, leading to strange evolutionary paths. In South America, the largest carnivore of all time was stalking the floodplains. Giganotosaurus was a true giant, even larger than Tyrannosaurus rex. It was a Carcharodontosaurid, a group of shark's-toothed lizards that specialized in slicing through flesh. Giganotosaurus did not have the bone-crushing bite of the T-Rex. Instead, it had teeth like steak knives, designed to inflict deep, bleeding wounds. It hunted the biggest herbivores that ever lived, the titanosaurs. Argentinosaurus was so massive that it weighed nearly 100 tons. To put that in perspective, that is the weight of 15 African elephants. The interaction between a predator like Giganotosaurus and prey like Argentinosaurus represents the ultimate biological arms race. In North America, the environment was different. It was a coastal plain, dotted with rivers and swamps. Here lived the most famous dinosaur of all time, Tyrannosaurus rex. But T-Rex was not just a monster, it was a marvel of biological engineering. Its skull was 6 feet long, lined with teeth the size of bananas. These teeth were serrated and designed to crush bone. We know this because we have found T-Rex coprolites, fossilized dung, that contain fragments of bone. This tells us that T-Rex did not just eat meat, it consumed the entire animal, extracting every ounce of nutrition. But the most terrifying aspect of the T-Rex was not its mouth, but its brain. It had one of the largest brains relative to its body size of any large theropod. Its eyes were forward-facing, giving it binocular vision, similar to a hawk or a human. This means it could see in 3 dimensions and judge distances with incredible accuracy. It was not a sluggish scavenger, as some scientists once thought. It was an intelligent, super-fast ambush predator. Imagine the feeling of a small Triceratops or Edmontosaurus grazing peacefully in a Cretaceous meadow. The ground is damp. The air is thick with the scent of rotting vegetation and flowers. Suddenly, the silence is broken. A shadow falls over the landscape. The ground begins to vibrate, not with the rhythmic thud of a sauropod, but with the heavy, thumping tread of a high-strung killer. The T-Rex explodes from the tree line. The hunt is over in seconds. The efficiency and power of this animal are unmatched in the history of life on Earth. Which of these apex predators fascinates you the most? Let me know in the comments below. While the giants grabbed all the headlines, a quiet revolution was happening in the undergrowth. We used to think of dinosaurs as slow, dim-witted, scaly beasts. But in the last few decades, a discovery in a place called Liaoning Province in China has completely changed our understanding of the prehistoric world. Here, in ancient lakebeds, paleontologists found fossils of exquisite detail. They found dinosaurs with feathers. These were not birds. They were non-avian dinosaurs, but they were covered in plumage. From the small, chicken-sized Microraptor to the larger Velociraptor, feathers were everywhere. This tells us that feathers likely evolved for warmth or display long before they were ever used for flight. Microraptor is a perfect example of this transition. It had 4 wings, 2 on its arms and 2 on its legs. It could glide from tree to tree, hunting small mammals and lizards in the dense forests. The fossils have even preserved the pigment melanin, allowing scientists to determine that Microraptor had iridescent black feathers, shining blue and green like a crow or a starling. This changes the way we visualize the past. The terrifying Velociraptor, made famous by movies, was actually about the size of a turkey and covered in feathers. It looked more like a terrifying eagle than a scaly lizard. This connection between dinosaurs and birds is undeniable. The skeletal structure of a chicken is almost identical to that of a T-Rex, just scaled down. The wishbone, the hollow bones, the 3-toed feet. It is all there. Even the lungs are similar. If you could travel back to the Cretaceous and listen to the sounds of the forest, you wouldn't just hear roars and hisses, you would hear chirping, cooing, and the rustle of feathers. It paints a much more vibrant and colorful picture of the lost world. It reminds us that evolution is not a straight line but a complex, branching tree, and that the dinosaurs never truly died out. They just got smaller, grew feathers, and learned to fly. We see them every day outside our windows. They are the birds. The sun was setting on the age of dinosaurs. The late Cretaceous was a time of incredible diversity, but also of rising tensions. The Deccan traps in modern-day India were erupting on a massive scale, spewing lava and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The climate was becoming unstable. Sea levels were dropping, changing habitats and migratory routes. The dinosaurs, ruling for over 160 million years, were facing a changing world. And then, the final blow arrived. It was a typical day, 66 million years ago. In the shallow seas that covered much of North America, a large ammonite was floating near the surface, unaware that its fossilized remains would mark the exact moment of the catastrophe. Above the atmosphere, a comet or asteroid, 9 miles wide, was hurtling toward Earth. It entered the atmosphere at a speed that compressed the air in front of it, generating temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. The pressure wave flattened forests for thousands of miles before the impactor even touched the ground. When it hit the Yucatan Peninsula, the energy release was apocalyptic. The bedrock was liquefied, tossing massive tsunamis that swept across the Gulf of Mexico and inland. A fireball expanded outward, incinerating anything within a radius of hundreds of miles. But the worst was yet to come. The impact threw vaporized rock, ash, and debris high into space. As this ejecta fell back to Earth, it burned up in the atmosphere, turning the sky into a broiler. The global temperature spiked. Animals that were lucky enough to survive the initial blast were cooked by the heat of the re-entering debris. Then came the long, cold winter. The dust and soot blocked the sun for months, perhaps years. Photosynthesis stopped. Plants died. The herbivores starved. The predators followed. It was a domino effect of extinction. The large animals, requiring the most food, were the first to go. The mighty T-Rex, the armored Ankylosaurus, the horned Triceratops, they all vanished. The earth fell silent, save for the wind blowing over the graves of the giants. It was the end of an era, a closing chapter in the history of life. But in the darkness, small furry creatures, our ancestors, the mammals, huddled in their burrows, waiting for the sun to return. The dust eventually settled. The skies cleared. The sun warmed the earth once more. But the world was no longer the domain of the dinosaurs. The giant reptiles were gone, leaving only the birds as their legacy. The mammals emerged from the shadows, diversifying and growing larger, eventually leading to us. The story of the dinosaurs is not just a story of monsters and rocks. It is a story of how fragile life is, and how resilient it can be. It is a warning that our planet is capable of immense change, sometimes in an instant. But mostly, it is a story of wonder. For over 160 million years, these animals filled every niche, evolved into every shape, and conquered every continent. They were the apex life forms on this planet for a time span that dwarfs the entire history of humanity. We look at their bones in museums, and we try to imagine them breathing, moving, and hunting. We use science to give them color, feathers, and behavior. We are still learning, still digging, and still finding new fossils that rewrite the textbooks. It is up to us to remember them, to study them, and to tell their story, because without them, we would not be here. Their extinction paved the way for our rise. They were the kings of the earth, and they will never truly be forgotten, as long as we keep looking into the past. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the age of dinosaurs. I hope you enjoyed learning about these magnificent creatures as much as I enjoyed sharing their stories with you. If you made it this far, you are a true fan of prehistoric life. Don't forget to let me know in the comments, if you could bring back one dinosaur using modern science, which one would you choose and why? Would it be the peaceful Brachiosaurus or the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex? I read every single comment, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more documentaries about the history of our planet. And hit that bell icon to get notified about our next adventure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and stay curious. Goodbye.